That's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight, losing my religion.
Hello YouTube, and welcome to the Body Honesty Project. My name is Lydia, and today we will be talking about the Taylor Swift video, Anti-Hero. Now, I know that I briefly touched on this a few weeks ago, but that was to compare it with Fat Funny Friend. But since then, there have been so many more TikToks that I think that this song deserves its own special commentary. So for you today, I have several different TikToks that I've chunked up into different categories so that we can touch on all the different speaking notes that people have said about the video. But I'm not going to play all the TikToks in their entirety, otherwise we would be here watching TikToks for 30 minutes. And I don't think you want to do that. So why don't we just jump right in?
How does she think her fans who are in larger bodies feel when they see that one of her biggest fears is being like them?
What's it like being someone's worst nightmare? This past weekend, fat Taylor Swift fans and listeners alike got a taste.
But when your biggest fear is that you are fat, that is literally fatphobia.
And I'm not here to debate if it was fatphobic or not. It was fatphobic. You know, we can talk about the nuance of it, but, you know, it was still fatphobic.
What Taylor did in that video with that scale was fatphobic. Point blank, period, done. Rationalize it all the fuck you want, but eating disorders are not an excuse to be fucking fatphobic, and what she did was harmful. Shit like this is exhausting.
Taylor Swift is a thin, cis, white woman. She is not actually fat. Fat is a neutral descriptor, and in the case of this music video, it is being used to exemplify her personal relationship with her own eating disorder and her body image. While I don't disparage Miss Swift for being candid in the ways that her eating disorder has affected her, it's extremely dangerous for somebody who doesn't actually have a fat experience to talk about feeling fat as though fat is a feeling. It's not a feeling, it's a physical descriptor.
How do you not realize that? And I empathize completely that she's struggled with ED stuff, but when you've struggled and you're in a thin body versus struggling in a larger body, there's a different experience. You've never had to live with that level of shame and hatred that the environment is giving you. Fatness is political. You get treated completely different in a larger body. And no matter how you feel about your body, how your body presents to the world is important, because that's how people will perceive you and treat you. So this was not a hit for me, Taylor Swift. You could have put anything in there. You could have been like, not good enough. You could have anything, but you put the word fat in there and it was derogatory. And I just think that there was a better way to handle that.
She could have used any other word, and many other people have talked about this. She could have stood on the weight and said, not worthy, or not enough, or not good enough, but it didn't need to say fat, because this right here, this is exactly what people think. Am I supposed to want to look like that? That's what that video is saying.
Taylor Swift has a plethora of resources, of money, of ability to change narratives that would help people with eating disorders and help keep people from developing eating disorders, but that's not what she chose to do. Fat people are not stepping stones for you to talk about your struggles. And so when people are all up in the comments like, you don't understand, she's got an eating disorder, you don't know what she's been through. I actually do know what she's been through. And what's happening is she is making an active choice that will do active harm to people rather than changing the narrative and helping everyone. And it is a choice. Realistically, Taylor Swift will never ever experience the marginalization of being fat. She gets to go on with the rest of her life not having to deal with the consequences of the things that she's made. So if she really cared, if she really wanted to change the narrative, she could have. She chose not to. And that's why I will not be hearing about it. Anybody can talk about their struggles. That's more than fine. But it's their responsibility to be a part of changing those things so others don't have to struggle. It's just that simple.
The conversation has to include that there's nothing wrong with being in larger or heavy or fat bodies. That's the tea. What do you think?
Can't believe you guys bullied Taylor Swift into changing her anti-hero music video. Don't you have any empathy for people with eating disorders? I feel so bad for her.
Speaking of empathy, don't you have any empathy for fat people with eating disorders? Or like fat activists in general?
This isn't about them. This is actually about people who struggle with feeling like they're fat, which is actually a symptom of having an eating disorder.
Yeah, it is a symptom, but it doesn't excuse open fatphobia. Fatphobia makes eating disorders worse. It is part of recovery to work on your fatphobia.
So you're calling people with eating disorders bad people because they're fatphobic? That seems unfair.
No, we're all raised to be fatphobic. You're not a bad person for having to unlearn that. But when someone points out your fatphobia to you and then you don't make any steps to unlearn it, that's when we veer into bad person territory, which luckily Taylor had it pointed out to her and she changed it, which is actually a great display of empathy.
What is?
Upon hearing that your art unintentionally harmed an entire group of people, you can either choose to ignore them and not change it, or you can choose to try to remedy the situation. Stop pitying Taylor Swift because she chose to do the right thing.
I just feel bad for her.
Respectfully, she doesn't need your pity. She's having the best week of her career. She just released a killer album, everyone loves it, and it's awesome. Go enjoy the fucking album. Stop bullying fat people on the internet. You are vile for that above all else. Cut that shit out.
Last time I want to talk about this video, but Taylor actually listened to people's critiques and edited the video. Here's what it is. Change made such an impact. Just by getting rid of this one scene, there was such a big difference in the video, and that's literally all we were asking for. So she was still able to allude to her eating disorder and body dysmorphia without being harmful to fat people, and that is quite literally all we were asking for. The amount of harassment that myself and other people have experienced over the last few days talking about this has been really, really unnecessary, when truly all it took was removing a 2-second clip from the video for it to be okay. We should be able to critique artists when their art causes harm without the fear of getting thousands and thousands of hate comments for that critique. I stand by my criticism. This is all we wanted. That small change didn't hurt Taylor in any way, and it made the video better. See how easy that was?
So the first speaking point that many of the TikTokers made was Taylor's worst fear or worst nightmare or worst insecurity being to look like them. And yes, that has got to hurt. But that does not change Taylor's truth. Because like it or not, we all have fears and insecurities that would mean that we look like or behave like someone else. What if Taylor's biggest fear was getting cancer? Well, there are people out there that have cancer. Is that saying something bad about them? What if Taylor's fear was getting acne or going gray? Well, people have acne and people go gray. Is she not allowed to have these fears just because other people also have that condition? I think that the song is personal, and personally, she is allowed to have a fear of becoming fat, even if there are fat people in existence. And the fear that she has for herself does not say anything about anyone else. People are allowed to have different fears and values. I'll give you an example. I can have 2 friends that treat the sun completely different. One of them can be completely sun-phobic and covers themselves with long clothing, wears a big hat, and lots of sunscreen. I can also have another friend that really likes to tan and puts on all the sun-tan lotion and goes and bakes herself in the sun all day. The 2 of them can still be friends, but hold very different values when it comes to the sun. One person's nightmare is becoming tanned, and the other person's nightmare is staying pale. What they do to themselves says nothing about the other. Now, Taylor was also criticized a lot that that scene was fatphobic. But I only think that it's fatphobic if you buy into the fat acceptance definition of fatphobic, because the rest of society seems to think that fatphobic means discrimination against fat people. Like, treating them kindly and with respect. Most people don't think that fatphobia includes not wanting to be fat. This type of fat phobia, most people don't feel, and fat acceptance is pushing that feeling onto people. Most people don't want to be fat, and you can't make most people want to be fat or accept becoming fat. Your fat acceptance is you accepting that you are fat. And you can also say that it includes society accepting that you are fat. But making an individual accept fatness is not something you have a right to do. The next comment that many TikTokers made was about how Taylor really isn't actually fat, so how would she know what the fat lived experience is like? Which is true. But when was this song about the fat lived experience? Have you ever listened to Taylor Swift before? Because all of her music is deeply personal. This is not about your experience. This is about her experience. And by making commentary like this of, oh, she'll never understand, well, you're invalidating her experience. Because as much as she will never understand what it is truly like to be fat, you will never understand what it's like to be a mega superstar and have your life scrutinized by the public. Her experience is real. Her experience is true. Her experience could have been way rougher than yours, but you won't listen, just because she is thin and you are not. And from where I'm sitting, you are the ones who are not being fair. You are the ones who are not listening to someone's personal experience. The next argument that I heard repeatedly was that she could have done it better. She could have used another word. She could have said not enough or worthless or something else. But what if that's the word that resonated the most with Taylor, with how she was feeling? Who are we to tell her how to feel and how to think? This projection of fat not being a feeling comes from fat acceptance. But to many of us, fat totally is a feeling. Feeling fat means feeling bloated and inadequate and sluggish and a whole lot of things all summed up into one word that represents what our bodies look and feel like at that time. What is wrong with us expressing ourselves the way that we want to express ourselves? This is censorship, and we should be fighting against this. Fat Funny Friend was not censored for saying, taking out Sharpies and drawing where to cut off parts of my skin, which could be far more damaging than stepping on the scale and seeing the word fat. I don't see how this is any different. Then there's also the plea that the conversation also needs to include that being fat is okay. But why? The song isn't about that. The song is not a bigger statement. The song is about Taylor and her experience. She doesn't need to make any sort of conversation. She doesn't need to say that being fat is okay. You might need to hear that, but she doesn't need to be the one to tell you. And why are we making celebrities have the same values as us? Maybe Taylor doesn't think that being fat is okay, so why are we pushing her to say and do things that are not authentic to her? If Taylor were to advocate for the fair treatment of fat people, but still not want herself to be fat, is she a bad person? Or does she still need to change the conversation so that people that are fat know that she thinks it's okay to be fat? Because I think that we're asking a little too much of our celebrities if we do that. There was also a lot said about how the scene posed harm, therefore it had to be changed. Now, I agree that there were scenes in this video that could pose harm, but the scenes that I'm thinking of were not this scene. They were these scenes.
At tea time, everybody agrees. At tea time, everybody agrees.
And do you know which group of people those scenes harmed? Because they aren't speaking up. And I can tell you, beyond a doubt, that these scenes were triggering as fuck for a lot of people. However, being someone who has been to recovery, and when I say recovery, I mean from all addictions. All addictions are present in the room, whether it's alcohol or drugs or gambling or sex or yes, even food. We treated them all the same. And one of the first things we talk about is dealing with our triggers and knowing that the world is not going to change for us to live trigger-free. So there's a whole group of people that were probably triggered by this video that are not saying anything because it's unrealistic to ask for the world to change to accommodate them. This made me wonder that what if those scenes with the binge drinking were of binge eating? And what would the fat acceptance community say about that? Because we certainly don't have a problem saying that binge drinking is a problem, but we need to protect those that binge eat. Also, there are no alcoholics coming out saying that Taylor can't make a scene like this because she never really had a drinking problem, and she's mocking those that actually do. No, that's not happening either, because any sort of awareness about drinking is a good thing. Whether or not the person has a bad problem or not, it's still a good thing and it's a good conversation to have. So why is it that fat acceptance can't see the same thing about eating disorders? But it wasn't all doom and gloom when doing the research. I did stumble across this one.
Okay, so I'm speaking as a fellow plus-size lady. I have to respectfully call bullshit on this whole video. One, I think if anybody knows Taylor at all, she would never in a million years do something to intentionally hurt a demographic of her fan base. I understand how it might be unsettling seeing the word fat appear on her scale when she's not fat at all. But I think it's important to remember that people are allowed to have their own body issues and their own fears regarding their own body. So I don't mean this in a rude way at all, but stop invalidating Taylor's experiences by making them about you and getting offended because, oh, well, I'm fat, so I'm mad about that. People are allowed to fear gaining weight. People are allowed to fear losing weight. Weight is a tricky fucking issue. Stop making it about you.
And I couldn't agree more. The song is not about you. Leave Taylor alone. She's allowed to make music about her own life. And if Splotchmaker can repeatedly say,
"This song isn't for you. This song isn't for you,"
when talking about Fat Funny Friend, well, that scene in Antihero is not for you. It's not always about you. And they should have known from the chorus that the song really wasn't for them at all, because the chorus says, "It's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me." It doesn't say, "It's you, hey, you're the problem, it's you," or "Society, environment, it's the problem, it's them," which would be more in line with what fat acceptance is. And we know that fat acceptance isn't exactly honest. But on this channel, we're all about being honest. So until next time, stay body positive, but also body honest.